All right, please be joined by my next guest, Stewart Cink. He is an 8-time PGA Tour winner, 2009 Open champion. Of course, he beat Tom Watson there, and he's finished third, at least third in all of the majors. So a pretty good form over the years in all the majors. But Stewart, what's going on? How are you doing this July?
I'm doing well. It's summertime. It's hot. We're past the 4th of July now, and so the dog days are here. But it's always a good time of year to be out playing golf.
Yeah. Well, speaking of playing golf in the summer, I just think about, fans at home, like all of us, we can relate to hot summer rounds. So what would be your advice when we get out there and play in the summer? Like, what's the best way to have the right mindset, right attitude towards summer golf?
Well, I mean, it's pretty obvious. I think we probably have heard all these tips, but you got to stay hydrated, and you have to get the sunscreen on. But I think just as important, something I don't hear that often, is you got to keep yourself fueled up too, because while you're sweating and out there, your body is going through more of its reserves, and you can't play a round of golf at 18 holes. And if you include the warm up, a lot of times our rounds, yours and mine both, they're 5-hour rounds, and you can't go the whole round without having some kind of nutritional intake because you're expending a lot. So I'm a constant eater on the golf course, just like fully cater the bag every day with bars and nut butters and fruits and stuff, just constantly snacking. And but it's good to keep your levels the same. And another thing that I like doing in the summer, um, I kind of have a little hand sweat sometimes, and
Yeah.
it's more like late in the day, like when it gets dusky. And I don't know why it is, but I get a little clammy hands. So my son Reagan, who used to caddy for me, he plays disc golf. And in the world of disc golf, they have this thing called a whale sack. That's an actual like proper name for a product, but it's like a rosin bag.
Okay.
And he taught me about this thing. And usually I have one strapped with a little carabiner on the side of my bag that when my hands get kind of clammy, I just go and squeeze it a few times, and it makes this like rosin puff, and it dries off my hands perfectly for a minute or so, which is easily enough to hit a shot. And so you'll see my bag out there on the range and every day on the PGA Tour with this little powdery sack hanging from it that a lot of people are like, what is that? But that's what it's for.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you mentioned Reagan. We'll get to him in a little bit. Obviously, both your sons got married in a pretty short amount of time, a couple summers ago. So we'll get into that. But before we do, obviously, current events, PGA Tour, LIV merger. That's a lot of the news that's happening right now. What was kind of your initial impression when you heard that news that came out, a few weeks ago about the partnership that they were talking about?
I was pretty shocked, really, mainly just because it seemed like such a about face from the messaging that we had been hearing from our executives, all the way from even from the rumblings of LIV starting way before the public even knew anything about it, until right up to literally the moments before I heard the announcement. I was pretty shocked, and I not knowing a lot of the details. I mean, I know they're slowly coming out, but I'm probably the last guy on tour to ask questions about details because I know probably the least. But it was pretty shocking. I have faith in Jay and the leadership team that we, the players, we hire them. We aren't in the interview process or anything, but the board makes the decisions, and we represent the board, and we basically we put the board in their positions. So I trust them, and I think it's just sometimes a tough pill to swallow when you entrust someone with a duty, and that duty might be the best way to accomplish it might be to kind of keep a secret from everybody. It's not always easy. So while I understand the players being upset about the secrecy, I also kind of understand the necessity of secrecy sometimes when it comes to getting a big deal done like this. That was a delicate negotiation.
Yeah, and you mentioned like your other players, your peers. Like, what's the talk been like among friends and other peers on the tour? Like, what's been the consensus? I'd imagine the views are wide ranging, during uncertain times like this.
I would imagine they probably are too, but I don't know, to be honest. I haven't talked to many players about it. It just doesn't come up in conversation out there. We have our own world we're trying to focus on. it's a full-time job just trying to be good at golf. And there's been some little casual talk about things. I played with Adam Scott at Travelers first 2 rounds, and um, him being Australian, I thought he had we had a good discussion about the Greg Norman's side of this thing and like where Greg is and I haven't heard Greg's name or seen him much since the whole thing was announced, but we just had a good, healthy conversation. That was a little different, so I remember it freshly. But mostly when I talk to players, it's kind of always the same things. That players they felt shocked like me, but also they hope for the best, and they think in the long run it'll probably be a good, healthy move for the PGA Tour. And I think being 50 years old now, I think it'd be a pretty good time to be like 25 years old and be at the top of the PGA Tour because it's going to be very lucrative for the next bunch of years.
Right. And so you're just saying, just with this forecast that PIF would be supporting the tour and that there'd be so much injected into it, like you would think for somebody entering their prime, that it would just be like a really good time.
I think so. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. I think the players are going to enjoy a pretty prosperous bunch of years coming up here. And I really think financially it's going to be, I think it's a win for the players, really. I mean, at the end of the day, there's a lot of different sides of the story, and but in the end, I think the players are going to be the ones that really do well in this.
You think there will be, I know there's a little discussion in that framework agreement about team golf. Do you think there will be much when it comes to, increasing team golf on tour, or what's your thought on that?
From what I could tell, and all I have to go on is the framework agreement that I read, it sounds like the tour has basically, in good faith, said, we'll look into team golf. And I mean, I've been in a lot of good faith agreements where they said, yeah, we'll look into it. And I know the end of a lot of those. The word is that team golf hasn't done what LIV Golf hoped it would do. From inside LIV, that's the word. And I don't know that there's a way to incorporate it when we already have this other enterprise that we're kind of part of, this TGL thing starting, that's kind of a team golf concept away from tournament play. So I wish I could tell you more, Garrett, but I'm seriously the last one. I'm like, you've got the people that are under a rock, and that's me, and then you've got those people that are under rocks, and I'm really under the second rock. I really don't ask a whole lot of questions and probe too much out there anymore, because it's just kind of something that in the past I was very interested in, and my interest in it is honestly just kind of waned a little bit over the last bunch of years, and I'm watching it all unfold from afar, just like we all are.
Well, what makes you say that that the team part of LIV hasn't, I don't know, hasn't been as productive, or hasn't been to fruition what we would have thought?
Well, I'm just saying that the word is from inside LIV that I've heard people that work for LIV say team golf is not doing what we thought it would do. And I don't really know exactly what they mean, but I think you can kind of connect the dots. And I haven't seen big company purchases and teams being renamed by owners and a lot of shares sold. I haven't seen a lot of that. Maybe it's happened and I haven't seen it, but I just haven't seen a lot of this ownership change, and where the value was forecasted to be in the team golf, it just doesn't seem to be there.
Yeah, I think recently, maybe because of proximity to being in London, they're there this week. But the Majestics, right? The Westwood and Poulter's team, they had some agreement that they just jumped in with some company that sponsors their bags. Do you see that on Twitter at all? Do you see that on social media this week?
I haven't seen anything, okay. But I'm not looking for it. So I haven't really been paying attention to LIV Golf features or stories or anything very much. It's just not been something I've been seeking.
But interesting though, as we talk about LIV Golf, was that ever an attraction for you? Like you said, being 50, obviously not in your prime anymore. Was that something where you ever approached or thought about going over to LIV at one point, or?
No, I never even considered it, mainly because I was so close to 50 that I would have put in jeopardy the possibility of playing PGA Tour Champions. And I'm looking forward to playing some of that. I already played one event and it was a blast. And I've got one next week too. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. And I didn't want to take a chance and jeopardize that, not knowing what Liv was going to hold in the future. Just I didn't feel like starting a new type of career, which is basically what those guys did. I didn't feel like starting a new career at my age. And it just, it didn't feel like it was worth the risk to me. I mean, I didn't see the upside. And so I didn't even, it wasn't even on the table ever. I mean, they never approached me. I never approached them. There was never even a conversation about it with me.
But you could understand, I'd imagine, you know, yeah, that why some of the guys went over. I mean, can you kind of see both sides of how that happened?
I can see that. And the way I've seen this, and you can probably imagine, I've been asked a lot. I didn't never like LIV Golf from the beginning, because it felt like a ambush on the PGA Tours. You know, it felt like they were just coming to try to take our stars away. And
Right.
I didn't really like the way they did that. I thought the style was just brash and, you know, juvenile, and I thought it was pretty immature. But at the same time, all the players that made individual decisions to go that direction, I don't fault them, because they, you know, everybody has to make the decision that's best for their family at the time and whatever situation they're in. You got players with injuries who their future on the PGA Tour is not certain, or you know, it's not set in concrete. I mean, every day for a professional golfer is pretty much, you know, you got to kind of make your own way through the forest, and sometimes literally make your way through the forest. And it's just not really, there's not a guarantee out there. So the attractiveness of a guarantee for many years to get paid a lot, and I understand that. I mean, I'm not, I may be under a rock, like I said, but I'm not like I'm not completely in the dark. So all the individuals that decided what they need to do, you got various setups. It's like a myriad of different circumstances for all the players. Some of my friends. So I get it, and I don't hold anybody accountable, or I don't feel like there's a wedge drawn between me and anybody like that. But so I don't like the organization very much. I didn't like it very much from the beginning. But as far as the individual decisions, you know, they can do whatever they want to do. And I got a personal relationship with a lot of those guys. I've got a professional relationship with all those guys. The professional relationship, you know, it is a little different now because they're playing LIV Golf and we're in different camps, but the personal relationship doesn't get changed at all.
Well, when you say you didn't like the organization from the start with LIV, and you felt like they were kind of immature and brash the way it kind of went about, like taking players back last summer when they started, knowing we're kind of entering into an agreement, you know, how do you kind of manage all those feelings about you know, the agreement we're getting into?
Well, how do I manage those feelings? I guess it really won't change. I'll still feel like that LIV Golf was brash and immature, and the way they started their style, that won't ever change. But the fact that they, well, again, now we're going on information that's partial here, but the fact that they wanted to sit down with the PGA Tour and negotiate and invest and start this new venture, and that our executives saw enough in it to carry this forward, it tells me that maybe LIV Golf, maybe they kind of learned some of the lessons about that beginning too, and maybe they felt like, okay, this though wasn't maybe the right way to get into it, and maybe this is a kind of a way that they're showing that they respect our organization and they want to be part of us, instead of trying to, you know, kind of squash us and put us off to the side.
Yeah. So at least they want to find common ground, basically.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's pretty obvious too. The way that they've found common ground is an asset that's going to possibly grow in value. I mean, you got to remember the I in PIF stands for investment. There's not a sponsorship in there anywhere. There's no S.
Right.
And their long-term goal was not to just be the sponsor of another golf tour that was going to cost them, I don't even know how much it was costing them a year, but it was a lot. It was going to just cost and cost and cost. And so That's not the purpose of the PIF. They are an investment fund and they seek returns. And so they must see value in the PGA Tour in this new venture, or otherwise they wouldn't have done it.
Right. You mentioned next week going to play in PGA Tour Champions back at Firestone. I mean, I'd imagine that's a big draw, having won there in 2004 World Golf Championships. I think you were in a playoff with Tiger 2 years later in 2006, right? So
That's right. Yeah.
You got to love going to Firestone, making your second appearance on the Champions Tour there, right?
Yeah, I love it. And I'm looking forward to seeing Firestone. It was, there's a few tournaments over the years that you start loving, you really love playing. And then when they disappear from the schedule, it's a little bit hurtful. Firestone's one of those for me. I played there so many times. I got to win there, had a great moment with Tiger, a long playoff where he won. But then, the business world sort of took Firestone off our rotation, and for your viewers and listeners, the tournament that used to be at Firestone, it used to be a winners only tournament. If you won a tournament, you went there. It was kind of like what Kapalua, the Century Championship, is kind of like today.
Yeah.
And it was in the summer. So if you won a tournament, you're going to do a couple of things. You're going to play in the Tournament Champions. You're going to play in Firestone. And it was awesome. Great tournament, small field. And then it became a World Golf Championship. Still a great tournament, small field, big purse, and it was a elite tournament. Played that way for a long time. And then when the FedEx Cup came about, we had the FedEx Cup start. And then at the end of the FedEx Cup negotiation, we had to redo our deal with FedEx to get to secure the next several years in the contract. And FedEx really wanted a big tournament at their place right there in Memphis at TPC Southwind, which basically surrounds the FedEx headquarters. Mm. And so part of that negotiation became, we want to move a WGC to Memphis. And then that's where you end up with I think it was called the WGC St. Jude. Yeah. Anyway, for Memphis, we played there, 4 years, maybe something like that. That tournament is the one that Firestone, it moved from Firestone to Memphis. And now the tournament became a playoff event. So over the years, Firestone received the Champions event. I think it was the senior players, and now it's sponsored by a company called Colleague Companies. And so when you see the name Colleague Companies Championship, you'll see that's what is now the senior players at Firestone. I hope I got that right, because if I'm wrong about that, someone's probably gonna come slap my wrist.
Yeah, but I mean, just being back with those guys again, you know what I mean? Like, what is that like, the camaraderie like with some of those guys that were your peers and older than you?
Yeah, a lot of them are my peers, and I can't. I'm in no middle ground here, because on the PGA Tour, I'm like the oldest by far, and I got no peers. And in Champions, I've got like almost no peers because I'm the youngest by far. I mean, at the other event I played this summer, the KitchenAid Senior PGA Championship, I literally turned 50 the Sunday before the tournament, so I was the youngest by far. And this one coming up, there'll be some newer players, I think, that are younger than me, but it's fun to mix it up with the guys I know from a long time ago, and I feel like I'm like the longest hitter. I mean, I'm not, because me and Padraig are pretty close to the same, and there's a couple other guys that can really move it. But for the most part, I'm in that longest 4 or 5 hitters by far, and it's really fun to just launch it and feel like you're I think I know what Bryson felt like when he came back after COVID, and he was like 300 pounds and hitting it like a gorilla.
All systems go.
Yeah.
Well, what about Bernhard Langer getting his win, breaking the record? I mean, that's got to be pretty impressive stuff, seeing a guy that's 15 years older than you that's able to win that many times on the PGA Tour Champions, right?
Yeah, it is. It's astonishing. I mean, anytime you see records broken in any elite level of a sport or a game, it's just it's always mind blowing. But for age to be a factor, I mean, it just tells you how important it is to stay fit. And I mean, you look at Bernhard; he looks like he could run a marathon right now. It's just it's inspiring to see what he does and how much he loves playing and competing, and what he gets out of his game. I mean, I played with him not long ago, maybe in the last year or two, and his distance is just not. He's not a long hitter at all, and to see him compete on on a big course like that one up in Wisconsin last week and hit fairways and hit greens and just grind everybody to death. And basically, I mean, it wasn't even an interesting finish. He was so far ahead. Dang. I mean, he just keeps on going, and it's inspiring.
Yeah. And who was caddying for you for the back in May at that
That's my wife,
senior?
Lisa. She's been
Lisa.
caddying for me. Yeah, she's been
Okay.
caddying for me since April.
Right. So what is that dynamic like with Lisa on the back?
It's really good. She's not really a caddy as far as doing all the things a lot of the caddies do. I mean, I'm pretty much on my own out there when it comes to making decisions, but fortunately, I'm also pretty good at that part of the game. So it's she knows me really well. That's her biggest key for caddying with me is she knows me, and she knows how to kind of help me get in the right space to free myself up. And I mean, I haven't played great since she's caddied for me. It's not like she's like she's my
Secret weapon.
the whatever the opposite of kryptonite is.
Okay.
She's not the opposite of kryptonite, but she's just been a joy to have out there. She's into it. She went 36 holes caddying at the U.S. Open qualifier in one day, which was pretty impressive, and we got through. That was a great day. So it's just she just knows me really well. She's a new golfer. She's kind of a beginner still, but she's played golf for a year. But she's not reading putts very much. I do occasionally ask her, like if I'm really confused, I'll say, "What is this doing?" And she'll kind of look at the green and go, "Slopes that way, I think." So it's a rudimentary sort of caddying, but she's really into it as far as like making sure she does what the other caddies do as far as raking and keeping up and not being in the way and respecting it's like a dance out there that players and caddies have to do. And so but she's already traveling with me and she's out there, so I just love being able to share the ups and downs of the rounds. And I don't any longer have to explain, like she'll say, "What happened on number 6?" I don't have to tell her that anymore because she's standing right there and she knows exactly what happens. So it's been fun. And I have this thing, I guess. I when my son Reagan caddied for a couple of years, it was incredible. And now I got Lisa caddying, and it's just it's fun to share it. I mean, I've been doing this for a long, long time, and it's kind of fun to share it with them, my loved ones.
Yeah. Well, speaking of your loved ones, I think about the summer of 2021, you had both your sons, Connor and Reagan, got married within, it felt like a 3 or 4 month span. Like, what is that like as a parent to go through something like that, where there's so much change at one time?
It was 7 weeks apart in 2021. July 31st, 2021, Reagan got married to Olivia, and September 18th, 2021, Connor got married to Jess. So yes, a whirlwind of activity. We were just so thankful that we didn't have daughters at that time, because planning a son's wedding was involved, but it wasn't anything like if it was a daughter. So we just had we did whatever we could do. We offered to be helpful, and we took parts, like I took transportation and kind of handled all the buses and all the whole logistics of getting everybody from place to place. And it was just it was a lot of fun. We love both the girls, and it's amazing to see them partner up and start their new lives together. And so a lot of sadly, they were so close together that we hardly remember any of the planning for the second one. The first one we remember a lot of, but the second one, it was just such a whirlwind that we don't remember that much of the planning. But both weddings turned out great, and they're both doing fine. Both living right here around Atlanta where I live. So within about 15 minutes, we have both of our sons and our daughters-in-law for now.
Yeah, for now. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting as we're in the month of July now. I think about the Open Championship. I mean, you've played so many over the years. I think your first one is 1998. And you've been to Liverpool a couple times. You played there in Open Championships. What is it about? I guess I'm getting into storytelling here, but like, what are some stories in the Opens over the years? I know you've had some good success, but you've also, you're close to a lot of guys on tour. You're close to Zach Johnson, who went on to win in 2015 at the old course. You won in 2009. But what kinds of stories come to your mind when you think of the experience of going over to the Open?
Well, it's a really wonderful tournament, and it's run quite similar to the way it was my first one, and probably to the way it was 50 years ago.
Okay.
It doesn't change that much. They set the course up beautifully. They let nature kind of just do its thing. If it's really wet summer, you're going to have thick and high rough. If it's a really dry summer, you're not going to have much rough. And they just don't manipulate things that much. Just very smart with the way they set the course up. And it's always such a fun challenge, different challenge from playing golf in the States. One thing I remember, it might have been my first one. I was at Birkdale. I played my first British Open at Birkdale in '98, but I played another one in 2008. So it was one of those two. But on the 16th hole at Birkdale, it's a par 4 that runs toward the beach, and the green is kind of set up on this. It's kind of like a dune, I guess, where over the back of the green you can kind of see the beach. And it's weird, not like it is here where you got the beach and you got the waves crashing. It's a beach and you really can't even see the water. It's like a mile of sand, literally. And right on this little dune where the 16th green is perched, they, I guess at some point over the years, they planted these pine trees, these little scrubby pines. They're not that tall behind the green. And they must be like a windbreak or something just to kind of keep it's windy. Birkdale is very windy. But the 16th green is exposed. So they have this little ring of trees around the back of the green, just these little, I mean, they're almost bushes, but they're just pines. And we were playing there in either 98 or 08. And the wind was blowing so hard as this squall came through right off the beach that the needles were blowing off the pine tree. And it was like you were being shot with arrows from the back of the green. Just this constant barrage of pine needles like coming straight at you. It was blowing that hard. And we had to get our umbrellas out and like shield ourselves from the pine needles. It's the most unusual type of wind event I've ever seen at a golf course. And play just kept going. It wasn't like it was too windy to play golf. It was just at that moment, there was such a huge gust that the needles were injuring you on the 16th green. And it was just one of the weirdest moments. And then, you turn around on the 17th tee and you hit straight downwind. So you can carry it like 340
No
on the
problem.
par 5. So it's just experiences like that. I had a whiff. I whiffed the year I won in Turnberry I believe it was the second round on the 4th hole. I had a whiff in the rough. Like I was right beside the green. I was 6 yards from the green and I tried to hack it from the rough and I just completely missed the ball. And so maybe the only person ever to win a major and have a whiff in the same tournament.
Oh, what hole was that on? And so it was third round or second round. You remember what hole?
Yeah, it was the 4th hole. It was a par 3. And I believe it was the second round. I don't remember exactly for sure, but yeah, I was just right at the green and just trying to hit a shot out of this heavy, hay, get in there and took a whack at it. And oh, there's the ball. Just completely missed. Made double bogey. And I mean, right there, I just knew I was going to win the tournament. Right.
Oh, yeah.
Now, but yeah, I had a whiff and a win at the same event and in a major. Maybe the only one in history. I don't know.
That is crazy. Well, speaking of that win, you had 30 minutes roughly after you finished out, after you put it out on 18, to wait and see what would this lead to, right? Would it go to a playoff? What's Watson, what's the last group's going to do? What is that like as a competitor? You never won a major at that point. What are the 30 minutes like?
Well, the thing is, there's no downside because I just made birdie on the 72nd hole to get to -2. At that time, I do believe Watson was on about the 16th hole and he was -3, maybe. I don't remember exactly, but a birdie on the 72nd hole of a major never hurts. So there was really no downside. We went in the locker room. It was my wife and my 2 boys. They were about 12 and 15 at the time. And then we had a couple that we know from London who was with us. And we just kind of corralled everybody. All 6 of us went in the locker room. I'm sure this couple was like, what in the world is going on? We just came to watch golf and now this. And so we're just in the locker room kind of watching it on on the television and watching it kind of unfold, and no downside at all. It just felt like if this happens, if I get in the playoff, there's no way I'm going to lose this tournament. I just felt like it was just going to be mine if it was a playoff. And then, sure enough, Watson made a bogey on 18. And by the way, to credit Watson, a lot of people think that he gagged that away, but where he hit that ball on the 18th hole over the green there, television did not do it justice. It is a difficult place to get your ball close. And he did pretty good to get it 10 feet. And then to make a bogey from back there was pretty expected. When I saw his ball go over the green, I felt like this is a bogey. So just, going up against someone who was obviously going to be the crowd favorite and the around the world television favorite. It was a situation came up recently that was similar, and it involved Tommy Fleetwood and Nick Taylor at the Canadian Open, RBC Canadian Open this year, where there was a playoff, and Tommy Fleetwood was the ogre because there was a chance that a Canadian might finally win that thing. And so that the next day I spoke to Tommy on the putting green at LA Country Club about how like it feels to be, the guy who everybody else wants to lose.
Yeah, broke the hearts.
Yeah, and for him it didn't turn out the way he wanted it to, but he definitely could understand that how the crowd feel was, and it was like that for me that day. But it was just it was a magical moment, and a lot of things happened right for me, and I felt like my game had been good enough to win majors at that point for a little while, and I never felt like I had a monkey on my back, but just to win that major championship at 36, I think I was 36 years old, I just felt like that was like a kind of a validating moment for me. Just I felt like I could do it, and when I had a really close call in the 2001 U.S. Open where I missed a short putt on the last hole, where I was really just trying to get out of the way of Retief Goosen, but turned out to be pretty costly. So it was nice to get back in that position and walk through the threshold of winning.
Right. And what was the story about you waiting it out for Watson to get to the first playoff hole, right? Like you wanted the crowd, like didn't you wait in a porta-john or something? You wanted to wait it out so that you would be there at the right time.
Yeah. When I was in there watching the watching the final hole and unfold and saw Watson ball go over the green, I felt like this is going to be a playoff, and I'm going to be like, no one's going to be out there supporting me. No one. And I just felt like, what can I do to, at least sort of minimize that? So the only thing I could come up with was, I just don't want to get to the tee first. I don't want to be standing on the tee with my driver like this while he walks up and everybody's going, come on, you can do it. Let's go, Tom. You're our guy. I already knew all that. I didn't need to hear that. So I developed this intricate plan to get to the tee second. It's really intricate, right? Of course, I'm being sarcastic. Not very intricate, but I did remember when they announced the playoff was going to start on hole 5 that there was a porta-john down about 60 or so yards off the tee, hidden away in the gorse bushes. And so that turned out to be my plan. I'm just going to go wait it out in the porta-john until it's time to come to the tee. And I did. We got on this bunch of carts. Everybody, I don't know why they chose the 5th hole, but it's a mile from the clubhouse. Some reason, but we went way out there on these armada of carts, just like, I don't know how many carts, and it was one person to a cart, so you couldn't even share with their caddy. They had a lot of carts, and my driver and I were headed towards 5, and I told her before we got out there, we're going to veer off and go to the porta-john, and we did, and encountered a little trouble on the way. Like, we hit a gallery rope that lodged up under the steering column of this cart with no top. And it was like a little dicey, heart rate elevated. And, but basically ended up still working the plan, still got to the porta-john and standing there kind of just like trying to get my heart rate down and listening. I could hear the crowd by the tee, and I was listening, and I heard Watson get there, and I heard the crowd sort of swell and the sound and all that and the cheering. And I knew that was my cue. So when I heard that sort of start to die down, I popped out of the Porta-John and I walked the little 50 or 60 yards back to the tee, and I got to the tee second, and I heard just a little polite, everybody was polite, and there was
Sure.
applause, but there wasn't a rousing like, "Come on, Stewart, you can do this, you got it." No, none of that. And so, but I was still working my plan, and I still felt super confident. I mean, I was playing very well, and those holes were difficult. 5, 6 were some of the most difficult holes in the tournament, and then we had a pretty easy par 5, and then 18 was straight downwind. So it went really hard hole, and then 2 of the easier holes. And Watson hit it. I mean, he hit first. He drew 1 or whatever out of the hat, and he hit first, and he hit a bullet down the center of the fairway. And I was like, whoa. And I was like, you got to wake up, because this guy's, he's no joke. And I knew that, of course. I just played, incidentally, at the Masters that year. I played a practice round with Tom Watson. We just happened to be on the first tee at the same time. It was a cold, rainy Tuesday, let's call it. Not many people were playing that day, but we got to the first tee at the same time, and we were playing Augusta National, which is like the opposite of any Open Championship venue. It's soft, it's long. That day it was cold and wet. It was playing like 8,000 yards long. And for 9 holes, I don't think Watson missed the center of the club face or the fairway, but he only hit it like 245 off the tee.
Right.
And after 9 holes, I was just thinking to myself, like, dang, Tom just wore the club face out, and this course is going to be really hard for him to compete on, but he could do something at the Open Championship. And sure enough, I mean,
Dangerous.
I end up with a playoff with the guy. I mean, his game is just built for courses like that. He hits a low, sort of a drawing shot that rolls a long way, and you don't really have to carry it 300 yards very often over there. So it was just weird that I played a practice round with him, and then boom, there we are in a playoff. And he ended up making a bogey on the first hole, a really tough, long par 4, and I made par. So I had a 1-shot lead, and then he hit it off in the high grass on 17, I think he took at least 2 to get out of the rough and made that 7. And I hit it on the green in 2 and made birdie. So it was over after that. But the 18th hole was pretty much just a stroll.
Yeah. Well, great stuff, Stewart. A lot of good memories there from the Open. You're heading there again this year, back to England, this time to Liverpool. But appreciate the time. Thanks for jumping on, and we'll catch up again soon, I'm sure.
Okay, Garrett. You got it.